Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The Galactic Military Academy on Station Theta 9 was, to put it mildly, not designed with humans in mind. Then again, nothing in the galaxy really was. The station hung in the black like some colossal monument to over-engineering, all gleaming metal and impossible architecture that made human eyes ache just trying to follow the angles. Inside, the corridors were too wide, the ceilings too high, and the gravity generators calibrated for species that considered comfortable to be somewhere around crushing. But here's the thing about bureaucracy. It doesn't care about your biology. It cares about forms, procedures, and the sacred art of passing responsibility to the next department. Which is exactly how Hal Briggs, maintenance technician second class, found himself standing in Combat Hall 19 wearing training gear that fit like a tent, surrounded by aliens who looked like they could bite through starship hulls. Hal was not an imposing figure. He stood at what the galaxy considered a perfectly average height for prey species, with the kind of build that suggested he'd never met a protein supplement he liked. His hair stuck up at odd angles, not from product, just from the recycled air doing whatever it wanted. And his face had the distinctive expression of someone who'd spent the last 6 hours trying to explain to 3 different departments that no, he was not supposed to be here. And yes, he was aware that contradicted the paperwork. The paperwork had won. The paperwork always won. Listen up, meat sacks. The voice that boomed across the training hall belonged to Instructor Bokrathar, and it sounded like continental plates grinding together while angry. Bokrathar himself was a sight that made physics textbooks weep. A being that looked like someone had carved a particularly aggressive statue out of a mountain, then given it anger management issues. His species hailed from a planet where gravity wasn't just a suggestion but a personal vendetta. And it showed. He was dense. Not in the intellectual sense, though the jury was still out on that, but in the way that neutron stars are dense. Every movement he made had weight, literally and metaphorically. His skin, if you could call it that, had the texture of granite that had lost a fight with a meteor shower. His eyes, small and deeply set, glowed with a dull orange that suggested either bioluminescence or profound indigestion. When he moved, the deck plates groaned. "You are here," Bokrathar continued, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was an inspiring register, but came across more as tectonic threat. "To become warriors, protectors of the Galactic Coalition, the finest fighting force in 7 sectors." He paused, his massive head swiveling to survey the assembled cadets. "Some of you will succeed. Most of you will wash out. And one of you—" His eyes, those glowing orange coals, fixed on Hal. "Shouldn't be here at all." Oh, good, Hal thought. "We're doing this already." The other cadets, and what a collection they were, turned to stare. There was a Hruthian in the front row, all chitinous plates and mandibles that could probably shear through steel. Behind him, a pair of Velkons, reptilian bruisers with natural armor that made them look like they'd been born wearing tank plating. Something that looked like an ambulatory thorn bush occupied the back corner, occasionally rustling in what might have been breathing or possibly threats. They were all big. They were all clearly built for violence in one form or another. And then there was Hal, who looked like a stiff breeze would require a consent form. "The human," Bokrathar said, making the word sound like a diagnosis, "is here because some idiot in processing confused a maintenance request with a conscription order." He stomped closer, each footfall a small seismic event. "Your species has no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no redundant organs. You have a skeleton made of calcium. Calcium. Like you're held together by dietary supplements and optimism. A few of the cadets made sounds that might have been laughter. The Haruthian clicked his mandibles in what was definitely amusement. Bokrathar loomed over Hal now, close enough that the heat radiating from his stone-like body made the air shimmer. Your bones are hollow. They're actually not, Hal started. Your skin tears if you look at it wrong. That's a bit. You have no business in combat roles. You should be in linguistics or food preparation. Something soft, where you won't snap like a twig the first time someone breathes on you too hard. Bokrathar crossed his arms, which looked like watching tectonic plates collide. Do you have anything to say for yourself, human? Hal looked up at the instructor. Way up, because everything in this place required craning your neck. And his expression didn't change. He didn't look scared. He didn't look angry. He looked like someone who'd been told this exact speech by 3 other people this week and was frankly getting bored of the material. I tried to tell them I wasn't supposed to be here, Hal said, his voice carrying that particular flatness that comes from exhausted patience. I'm a maintenance tech. I fix air recyclers. I'm very good at fixing air recyclers. But apparently, the forms got mixed up, and now I'm here, and nobody will process my transfer request because it's not Thursday. I don't care about your excuses. Bokrathar's voice could have stripped paint. You're in my hall now, which means you follow my rules. And my first rule is that weaklings don't waste my time. Cool, Hal said. So, I can leave? The laughter that rippled through the cadets was louder this time. Even the thornbush creature made a sound like wind through dead leaves, which Hal chose to interpret as mirth rather than a death threat. Bokrathar's eyes flared brighter. You leave when I say you can leave, which will be after I demonstrate to this entire class why humans have no place in combat operations. He stepped back, gesturing broadly at the training floor. Today's lesson is on defensive positioning and shield integrity. Combat isn't just about hitting hard. It's about not getting hit. It's about presenting an immovable obstacle to your enemy. He reached to his belt, a massive thing that looked like it could double as a cargo restraint, and activated something that made the air around him shimmer and solidify. An energy shield, Hal recognized, though this one was military grade and roughly the size of a small car. It hummed with power, a low thrumming that you felt in your teeth. This, Bokrathar announced, is a Mark 12 personal defense shield, standard issue for Coalition heavy infantry. It can withstand direct hits from plasma rifles, kinetic hammers, and pretty much anything short of orbital bombardment. He slapped the shield with one massive hand, producing a sound like thunder. It's designed to protect warriors in close combat. Real warriors. He pointed at Hal. You. Human. Front and center. Oh no, Hal thought. Here we go. He walked forward, aware of every eye in the hall tracking his movement. The distance between the back of the room and the center of the training floor felt like walking to his own execution, if executions were conducted by very judgmental rocks. Here's how this works, Bokrathar said, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something very simple to someone very stupid. You're going to attack me. Use whatever pitiful combat technique your species pretends to have. And you're going to bounce off my shield like an insect hitting a viewport. Then everyone here will understand why fragile species stay in their lane. Hal stood there, looking at the massive alien, the impenetrable shield, and the audience of cadets who clearly expected entertainment. This was, he reflected, exactly the kind of situation that made him wish he'd been better at filling out forms. Any questions? Bokrathar asked, his tone making it clear that questions would be taken as further evidence of weakness. Hal raised a hand. "Can I stretch first?" The instructor's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Stretch. You know, loosen up. I've been sitting in processing for like 6 hours, and my back's kind of stiff." Bokrathar stared at him. The cadets stared at him. Even the thorn bush seemed confused. "You want to stretch before I demonstrate your complete inadequacy for combat?" "I mean, I'd prefer not to pull something," Hal said reasonably. "Bad enough I'm here. Don't need a muscle strain on top of it." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Bokrathar made a sound that might have been a laugh or possibly indigestion. With his species, it was hard to tell. "Fine. Stretch. Take your time. Make yourself comfortable before your humiliation." "Thanks," Hal said, and meant it. What happened next would, in hindsight, be recognized as the exact moment the Galactic Military Academy's understanding of human physiology went from incomplete to fundamentally traumatic. Hal rolled his neck. Nothing unusual about that. Lots of species had necks. But then he kept rolling it, the angle getting wider until his head was tilted at what looked like 90 degrees from vertical. Vertebrae popped in a cascade of sounds that made the Hruthian cadet take a step backward. Then, the shoulders. Hal reached across his body, pulling one arm and then the other, the joints moving through ranges that made several aliens make distressed noises. His shoulders didn't just rotate, they seemed to dislocate and relocate with casual indifference to what joints were supposed to do. "What is he doing?" someone whispered. I think his bones are coming apart," another cadet replied, sounding legitimately horrified. Hal bent forward, grabbed his ankles, and pressed his face to his shins. Not reaching down with effort, actually folding himself like he was made of rubber instead of biology. Then, just to really commit to the bit, he dropped into a full split. Casual. Easy. Like his pelvis wasn't attached to anything important. The training hall had gone very quiet. Bokrathar was staring. His glowing eyes had dimmed slightly, and his mouth, a slash in stone, hung open just enough to suggest profound confusion. Hal stood up, rolled his shoulders one more time, and faced the instructor. "Okay, I'm good. What did you want me to do?" The instructor shook himself, literally, small bits of dust falling from his rocky exterior. "Attack. Just attack the shield. Try to hit me." "You sure?" Hal asked. "Because I really think this whole demonstration is unnecessary. Attack!" Right then, Hal looked at the shield, humming with enough power to stop a missile. He looked at Bokrathar, solid as a monument and probably twice as immovable. He looked at the cadets, all watching with various expressions of anticipation, and, in some cases, what might have been pity. And Hal thought, well, I did try to warn everyone. He took a breath, bent backward, not a little backward, all the way backward, his spine curving like he'd forgotten he had one, until his hands touched the floor behind him, and he was looking at the world upside down. Then he pushed off. A dimly lit alien bar filled with smoke and neon lights, various alien species sitting at tables, the atmosphere thick with tension and the smell of exotic drinks. Close-up of a human woman's hands shuffling metallic cards on a scratched table, her fingers moving with practiced precision under flickering overhead lights. Wide shot of Lieutenant Amara sitting in a corner booth, her face calm and unreadable, surrounded by the chaotic mixture of alien patrons in the fractured Comet bar. Medium shot of Thomas across from Amara, a dark-haired human male studying his cards with furrowed brows, the glow from a nearby screen reflecting off his face. Over-the-shoulder view from Amara's perspective, showing her cards fanned out, while alien conversations create a symphony of translated voices in the background. Wide angle of the bar interior, showing multiple alien species. A Plymouth bartender with reptilian features serving drinks behind a counter lined with strange bottles. Close-up of a small blue-furred alien merchant stumbling backwards, fear in his large eyes as a massive shadow looms over him near the bar entrance. Low-angle shot revealing 8 feet of armored alien warrior, 4 muscular arms crossed over a chitinous chest plate. The Orthri named Ralnek, towering menacingly. Medium shot of Ralnek's face, showing small deep-set eyes under a prominent brow ridge, his mouth twisted in a cruel smile revealing rows of sharp teeth. Close-up of the merchant's trembling hands raised in a placating gesture as one of Ralnek's 4 massive hands grabs his shirt collar. Wide shot of the bar going quiet, alien patrons turning to watch the confrontation, some moving away while others lean forward with morbid curiosity. Medium shot of 2 Plymouth security guards near the bar, their reptilian eyes watching but making no move to intervene, hands resting on holstered weapons. Close-up of Amara's eyes as she looks up from her cards, her expression shifting from relaxed to alert, jaw tightening slightly. Over-the-shoulder shot from Tomas's perspective, as he watches Amara set down her cards with deliberate slowness, already shaking his head in warning. Medium shot of Amara standing up, her chair scraping against the metal floor, the sound cutting through the tense silence like a blade. Wide angle showing Amara walking toward the confrontation, her posture relaxed but purposeful, alien eyes following her movement across the grimy bar floor. Close-up of Amara's face as she speaks, her voice calm but carrying authority, telling Ralnek to put the merchant down. Medium shot of Ralnek's head swiveling toward Amara, all 4 arms still holding the terrified merchant. Confusion, then amusement spreading across his alien features. Close-up of Ralnek's mouth as he speaks the word human like an insult, his translator rendering the contempt in flat mechanical tones. Wide shot showing the size difference between Amara at 5'8" and Ralnek at 8 feet tall, the visual emphasizing the apparent mismatch. Medium shot of the merchant scrambling away as Ralnek drops him, the small alien disappearing into the crowd toward the exit. Close-up of Ralnek's 4 arms flexing in sequence, muscles rippling beneath chitinous plates, a display of intimidation and power. Medium shot of Amara standing her ground 10 feet away, hands loose at her sides, her expression unchanging despite the obvious threat. Over-the-shoulder view from behind Ralnek, showing Amara's small human frame, the angle emphasizing how vulnerable she appears to be. Close-up of Amara's mouth delivering a calm warning, suggesting Ralnek walk away and sleep off whatever he's been drinking. Medium shot of Ralnek taking aggressive steps forward, closing the distance, his massive form casting a shadow over Amara's position. Wide angle of the entire bar, now watching in complete silence, aliens of various species frozen in anticipation of violence or tragedy. Close-up of Ralnek's face as he boasts about Orthri superiority, calling humans soft skins with fragile bones and pathetic strength. Medium shot of Amara, tilting her head back to maintain eye contact as Ralnek looms directly over her, refusing to show intimidation. Close-up of Amara's hand gesturing dismissively as she interrupts his speech about unbreakable bones and unstoppable warriors. Medium shot of Ralnek's expression darkening with anger at being interrupted and mocked by someone he considers inferior prey. Wide shot showing Ralnek spreading all 4 arms wide in an exaggerated gesture of openness, exposing his entire armored torso. Close-up of Ralnek's mouth forming the challenge, telling Amara to hit him, that she couldn't hurt him even if he let her try. Medium shot of Thomas, half standing at the table behind Amara, his face showing worry and fear, mouthing the word no repeatedly. Close-up of Amara's eyes as she issues one final warning, giving Ralnek a last chance to retract his challenge and walk away. Medium shot of Ralnek tapping his chest plate with one hand, the hollow sound echoing through the silent bar, demanding she give her best shot. Wide angle showing Amara taking 2 deliberate steps backward, creating space, while Ralnek watches with amusement, thinking she's retreating. Close-up of Amara's feet as she plants them shoulder-width apart, her back foot angling outward, weight distribution shifting into a fighting stance. Medium shot of Amara's torso as her hips rotate slightly, her right arm drawing back in a compact chamber, left hand rising for balance. Close-up of Amara's face showing complete focus and calm, her breathing controlled, eyes locked on a specific point on Ralnek's chest. Wide shot capturing the moment before impact, Amara's entire body coiled like a spring, Ralnek still grinning with absolute confidence. Extreme close-up of Amara's back foot driving into the floor with explosive force, the cheap paneling cracking under the pressure. Medium shot showing the kinetic chain in motion, force traveling from legs through hips as Amara's body rotates like a turbine. Close-up of Amara's fist connecting with Ralnek's chest plate at an upward 30-degree angle, the impact point 3 inches below his sternum. Extreme close-up of the chitinous armor plate at moment of contact, spiderweb cracks radiating outward from the impact point in slow detail. Wide shot of the explosive moment, a visible shockwave rippling through the air, the sound like thunder in the enclosed metal space. Close-up of Ralnek's face as his expression transforms instantly from amusement to shock to pure agony, eyes going impossibly wide. Medium shot of Ralnek's forearms flailing uselessly as his legs simply stop functioning, his massive body beginning to collapse downward. Wide angle showing Ralnek hitting the floor with tremendous force, bottles rattling behind the bar, the impact shaking the entire room. Close-up of Amara stepping back and shaking out her right hand, knuckles already swelling and turning purple from the impact. Medium shot of Ralnek on the floor, conscious but gasping for air, all 4 arms twitching as he tries unsuccessfully to stand. Wide shot of the bar erupting into chaos, aliens scattering toward exits, while others surge forward to see what happened to the supposedly unbeatable warrior. Close-up of the cracked chest plate on Ralnek's torso, the damage visible and extensive, the supposedly unbreakable armor compromised. Medium shot of Thomas reaching Amara's side, his face a mixture of horror and disbelief, grabbing her arm while staring at the fallen or-3. Wide angle showing the 2 Plymouth guards finally moving toward the scene, hands on weapons, their reptilian features showing confusion and alarm. Close-up of a guard's face as he demands to know what happened, his translator rendering shock in mechanical monotone. Medium shot of Amara calmly explaining that Ralnek challenged her publicly, and she accepted, her expression showing zero remorse or concern. Wide shot of approximately 30 alien witnesses all talking at once, gesturing toward Amara and the fallen warrior, creating a cacophony of overlapping testimony. Close-up of Ralnek's face as he weakly nods confirmation when asked if he issued the challenge, shame mixing with pain. Medium shot of medical personnel rushing in with a hover stretcher and scanning equipment, the insectoid Dr. Lonick leading the response team. Close-up of Lonick's compound eyes and clicking mandibles as the doctor scans Ralnek, the medical device showing alarming readings. Medium shot of Lanik looking from the scanner to Amara's bruised hand and back again, mandibles clicking in disbelief at the impossible correlation. Wide angle of the medical team carefully loading the still conscious but immobilized Ralnek onto the stretcher, his forearms dangling limply. Close-up of a security guard's clawed hand gesturing for Amara to come with them, informing her that Commander Palanex wants a statement. Medium shot of Amara returning to her table, calmly picking up her glass and draining the rest of her terrible drink before complying. Wide shot of Amara being escorted out of the fractured comet by two guards, alien patrons parting to let them pass, staring with newfound wariness. Close-up of Amara's reflection in a grimy window as she passes, her expression calm and composed despite having just changed everything. Medium shot inside the security office, harsh lighting overhead, Amara sitting at a metal table with her bruised hand resting on the surface. Wide angle showing Commander Palanex entering, a 6-foot-tall Nithral with gecko-like features and enormous calculating eyes studying Amara intently. Close-up of a holographic display activating on the table, security footage from the bar beginning to play with perfect clarity. Medium shot showing both Amara and Palanex watching the footage, the punch replaying in slow motion, the mechanics of the strike visible. Wide shot of Dr. Lanik entering with a datapad covered in medical scans, mandibles clicking urgently with new information about the impossible injury. Close-up of the datapad screen showing the extent of Ralnek's internal damage, fractures and compression injuries that shouldn't exist from a human punch. Medium shot of Amara standing and demonstrating the kinetic chain mechanics, her body moving through the punch sequence in slow educational detail. Wide angle of everyone in the security office watching Amara explain human fighting techniques, the revelation spreading across their alien features. Close-up of Amara's mouth as she delivers the final explanation about chitin being vulnerable to compression force, like stepping on a beetle. Medium shot of the security office door opening, 3 angry Orth-3 warriors entering the medical bay where Ralnek floats in a regeneration pod. Wide shot of the regeneration pod filled with pale blue gel, Ralnek's massive form suspended inside, eyes open and staring with shame and pain. Close-up of the female Orth-3 warrior, Thankor's face, fury and disbelief warring across her features as she demands justice for the humiliation. Medium shot of Ralnek's hand pressing against the inside of the pod, his weak voice stopping the brewing violence to admit his defeat was fair and earned. News traveled fast through Theta 9 station. By the time Hal made it back to his assigned quarters, which were designed for something with different leg joints and smelled faintly of ammonia, half the station had already heard some version of what happened in Combat Hall 19. Most of the versions were wildly inaccurate. His favorite, overheard in the mess hall, claimed he'd dislocated every bone in his body simultaneously and reassembled himself into a human battering ram. "That's not even how bones work," he'd muttered into his food supplement, which tasted like someone had tried to make chicken, but gave up halfway through and added sadness instead. By morning cycle, 3 more instructors had requested demonstrations. By afternoon, it was 6. Apparently, breaking Bokrathar's shield had made Hal the station's newest attraction, like a zoo exhibit that could fill out paperwork. The first demonstration was in the grappling hall, overseen by Instructor Rathnoon, a being that looked like someone had crossed an octopus with a professional wrestler and given the result a militant attitude problem. Rathnoon specialized in restraint techniques, holds, locks, submission positions that could incapacitate an opponent without lethal force. "The human body," Rathnoon announced to the assembled class, his tentacles flexing in what might have been anticipation, has numerous pressure points and joint vulnerabilities. I will demonstrate proper restraint protocols using the human as an example. Hal, standing in the center of the mat, had the distinct feeling this was going to hurt. It didn't, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Rathnoon moved fast, tentacles whipping out to grab Hal's arms and lock them in what should have been an inescapable hold. The technique was perfect, the pressure applied exactly right, the angle designed to make any attempt at escape incredibly painful. Hal just bent out of it. His shoulders rotated through arcs that made Rathnoon's tentacles lose their grip. His torso twisted at the waist like his spine was ball-jointed. And suddenly, he was standing 3 feet away, rotating his arms experimentally. "Huh," Hal said. "That actually felt kind of good. Like a massage." Rathnoon stared at his empty tentacles. That's not possible. I had your humeral joint locked at maximum flexion." "Oh, you mean this?" Hal rotated his shoulder backward until his elbow pointed at the ceiling. "Yeah, my shoulders are pretty loose. I had to stop sleeping on my stomach because I kept waking up with my arms at weird angles." The instructor tried again, and again, and 17 more times, with increasingly elaborate holds that should have left Hal immobilized or unconscious. Each time, Hal simply bent, twisted, or compressed himself out of the restraint with the casual ease of someone shrugging off a jacket. "This is a nightmare," Rathnoon whispered, his tentacles hanging limply. "Every hold in the manual assumes skeletal rigidity. You don't have skeletal rigidity. You have skeletal suggestions." "I mean, I have bones," Hal offered. "They're just attached loosely. Is that helpful?" It was not helpful. The next demonstration was even worse, depending on your perspective. Instructor Holmbeck, who taught advanced combat endurance, decided to test human stamina against established coalition baselines. The test was simple: full combat gear, elevated temperature environment, continuous movement until failure. Holmbeck was built like a furnace with legs, his species having evolved on a world where temperate meant hot enough to melt lead. He radiated heat, literally, and could operate in environments that would cook most organic life. The test chamber climbed to 48 degrees, then 50, then 55. Hal started sweating, which was, apparently, both disgusting and terrifying to everyone watching. "What is that?" one cadet whispered, watching droplets of moisture bead on Hal's forehead. I think he's leaking," another replied, sounding horrified. "Is that a stress response? Is he melting?" Hal wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "It's just sweat. You know, evaporative cooling? My body's regulating its temperature." The class stared at him in collective revulsion. "Your body leaks fluid to cool itself?" Holmbeck asked, his voice carrying notes of academic fascination and personal disgust. "Yeah? Don't you? Wait, how do you guys cool down?" As it turned out, most species either shut down temporarily to radiate heat, retreated to cooler environments, or just died. The concept of an active, continuous cooling system that operated automatically was completely foreign. And the fact that it worked by secreting bodily fluids made it worse. Hal lasted 2 hours in the heat chamber. Holmbeck, designed for high temperatures, lasted 3, but he was visibly struggling at the end, his movements slow and labored. Hal just kept sweating, kept moving, his body cheerfully dumping heat through his skin like it was no big deal. "Humans are wet," one cadet said flatly, as Hal exited the chamber, his shirt soaked through. "That's your secret. You're just aggressively moist." "I really wish you'd phrase it differently," Hal said. "But the breaking point, The moment when the Academy's collective perception of humans shifted from fragile to what is wrong with them came during the injury recovery assessment. It was supposed to be a simple medical demonstration. Instructor Pivenal, who taught combat medicine, was showing the class how different species recovered from common training injuries. He'd called Hal forward to discuss human fragility and the importance of protective equipment. Humans, Pivenal explained, manipulating a holographic display of human anatomy, have minimal regenerative capabilities. A torn ligament can take months to heal. A broken bone requires external stabilization. They're essentially held together by hope and medical intervention. Hal raised his hand. Actually, I hyperextended my knee last week, moving some equipment. The instructor's multiple eyes swiveled to him. And you're still walking? Shouldn't you be in medical? It's fine now. Hal bent his leg to demonstrate. Took like 3 days to stop being sore. It's a little stiff sometimes, but mostly back to normal. Silence. 3 days, Pivenal repeated slowly. Yeah, I've had worse. Sprained my ankle pretty bad 2 months ago. That took almost a week. More silence. You're telling me, the instructor said, his voice very carefully controlled, that you sustained ligament damage severe enough to cause mobility impairment, and you recovered in days without medical intervention? I put ice on it? The medical instructor pulled up Hal's file, scanning through it with increasing agitation. According to this, you've had 12 documented injuries in the past solar year. Joint strains, muscle tears, 2 instances of what we'd classify as skeletal microfractures. You reported for duty the next day for all of them. Well, yeah, they weren't that bad. Not that bad. Pivenal's voice had climbed several octaves. This injury here, this shoulder separation, should have required surgical reconstruction and 6 months recovery. Time! Oh, that. Yeah, I just popped it back in. Hurt like hell, though. The instructor looked at his class, then back at Hal, then at the ceiling like he was hoping for divine intervention. Humans don't just have flexibility. They have battlefield-grade regenerative capabilities disguised as normal healing. That seems like an exaggeration, Hal said. You relocated your own disarticulated joint. It's not rocket science. You just kind of push it until it goes back in the socket. 3 cadets fainted. Actual fainting. The Heruthian made a sound like grinding metal and left the room. Even the thornbush creature seemed to droop. By the end of the week, Hal couldn't walk through a corridor without cadets pressing themselves against the walls to let him pass. The morning drill that used to include mocking comments about human weakness now featured uncomfortable silence and what might have been fearful respect. He'd become a monster, not through violence or aggression, but through the simple act of being biologically human in a galaxy that suddenly realized humans were built wrong in all the right ways. Instructor Nix Palin found him in the mess hall, sitting alone because nobody wanted to sit near the being that leaked and bent and healed wrong. You've caused quite a stir, Nix Palin observed, settling gracefully into the seat across from him with that unsettling mantis-like precision. I fixed an air recycler yesterday, Hal said tiredly. Nobody even said thank you. They just backed away slowly. You've fundamentally challenged the Academy's understanding of combat capability assessment? Nix Palin's multifaceted eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. The combat theorists are having philosophical crises. Bockrother has requested a transfer to a different station. I just want to do my job. Your job just changed. Nix Palin slid a datapad across the table. Bockrother has demanded a rematch. Official combat assessment, full protocols, tomorrow at midday. He's spent the entire week training specifically to counter human flexibility patterns. He's got upgraded shield generators, new tactical algorithms, and what I'm told is a very comprehensive revenge plan. Hal looked at the datapad like it had personally betrayed him. Can I say no? You can, but everyone on this station will watch the recording anyway. Better to control the narrative. And if I lose? Nix Palin's expression, difficult to read on a face with that many moving parts, might have been a smile. Then you lose. But I don't think you will. You fight like physics is a suggestion, and Bokrathar fights like it's a religion. That's an advantage. Hal picked up his food supplement, which had somehow gotten colder and sadder. I really, really hate bureaucracy. Welcome to the military, Nix Palin said, where your paperwork matters more than your biology. Story of my life. The combat assessment arena was significantly larger than Combat Hall 19, which made sense given that half the station had apparently decided this was the entertainment event of the rotation. The observation galleries were packed with cadets, instructors, maintenance personnel, and what Hal suspected were beings who'd literally never attended a combat demonstration before, but weren't about to miss the human either humiliate himself or do something biologically disturbing. Possibly both. The arena floor was standard military configuration, reinforced plating designed to handle heavy weapons fire, environmental controls that could simulate everything from Arctic conditions to volcanic hellscapes, and enough sensor equipment to track a fight down to individual muscle twitches. Hal stood in the center, wearing the same ill-fitting training gear, trying very hard not to think about how many people were watching. Bokrathar entered from the opposite side, and he'd clearly been busy. The instructor had upgraded everything. His shield generator was now a Mark 19, military surplus from actual frontline combat units, probably cost more than the entire maintenance department's annual budget. He'd added reinforced plating to his already ridiculous physiology, making him look less like a mobile mountain and more like a mobile fortress. His movements were different too, more calculated, like he'd spent every waking hour studying how to murder someone made of flexible meat. "Human!" Bokrathar's voice boomed across the arena, amplified by the acoustics. "I have analyzed your previous trickery. I have trained. I have prepared. Today, you will learn why rigid discipline defeats chaotic flexibility." Hal cupped his hands around his mouth. "Can we maybe just call it a draw and get lunch instead?" The crowd made various sounds of amusement and disappointment. Apparently, they wanted blood. Or whatever humans had. Probably they weren't sure. "Begin!" the automated referee system announced, and the arena lighting shifted to combat mode. Bokrathar didn't wait. He'd learned from last time, no monologues, no posturing, just immediate overwhelming force. He charged forward with the kind of momentum that suggested his new strategy was hit the human before the human does something weird. It was, Hal had to admit, not a terrible plan. The instructor closed the distance in seconds, his massive fist coming down in a strike that would have turned Hal into a very thin paste. But Hal had seen it coming. Not through any special combat sense, just through the basic observation that someone built like a geological formation wasn't big on subtlety. He dropped into a split. Not dodge to the side, not roll away, straight down into a full split that put him below the strike arc entirely. Bokrathar's fist hit nothing but air. The momentum carried him forward half a step, which was all the opening Hal needed. He pressed his hands flat on the floor and kicked up and backward, his legs moving through ranges that made several. People in the audience make distressed noises. His feet connected with Bokrathar's chest, not hard enough to damage the instructor's stone-like hide, but enough to push him off balance. The massive alien stumbled. Not much, just enough. Hal rolled sideways, came up on his feet, and immediately had to dodge again, because Bokrather had recovered faster than expected. The instructor's shield was up now, that Mark 19 humming with enough power to stop a tank round. He'd positioned himself in a perfect defensive stance, the shield covering his entire front arc, his footing solid. "Your tricks won't work," Bokrather announced. "I've studied your movement patterns. I've programmed the shield to account for non-standard approach angles. You cannot break through." Hal circled slowly, watching the way the shield moved, the way Bokrathar's weight distributed. The instructor had done his homework. Every angle of approach was covered. The shield's algorithms were probably running overtime, calculating potential human weirdness. So Hal didn't attack the shield at all. He ran. Not at Bokrather, but around him, using the arena's full space. The instructor turned to track him, maintaining his defensive position, clearly waiting for an opening to counter. But Hal just kept running, varying his speed, changing direction randomly, making Bokrather's eyes track back and forth. "Coward!" Bokrather shouted. "Stand and fight!" Hal didn't answer. He was too busy breathing, keeping his pace steady, letting his body do what it did best: dump heat through his skin, regulate his temperature, operate efficiently in ways the galaxy apparently found horrifying. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 5. Bokrather was still standing strong, his shield unwavering, his stance perfect. But Hal could see small signs. The way the instructor's breathing had changed rhythm, the slight shift in his footing, the way his shield tracking was getting just fractionally slower. High-gravity species were built for strength, not endurance. And Bokrather's upgraded armor made him even heavier, even less efficient. Every second he stood there in full combat stance, maintaining that power-hungry shield, his body was working overtime against his own mass. Hal, meanwhile, was just jogging. Sweating profusely, yes, which was making some audience members visibly uncomfortable but otherwise fine. He could do this all day, literally. Humans were persistence hunters. They ran things down until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. 10 minutes in, Bokrathar's movements were noticeably slower. The instructor was overheating, his rocky exterior showing stress fractures from thermal expansion, his breathing coming in heavy stone-grinding sounds. "Fight me!" Bokrather demanded, but his voice lacked the earlier thunder. Hal kept running, kept moving, kept being infuriatingly, efficiently human. At 15 minutes, Bokrather's shield flickered. Just for a moment, but everyone saw it. The power. Draw was too high, the generator straining to maintain coverage while calculating defense against an opponent who wouldn't stop moving. At 18 minutes, the instructor stumbled. His footing, so perfect before, slipped on his own overheated excretions. He caught himself, but the damage was done. His defensive stance had broken. Hal stopped running, stood there, hands on his knees, catching his breath, sweat dripping onto the arena floor. "You good?" he called out. "You look like you need a break." Bokrather tried to raise his shield again, but his arms were shaking now, the massive limbs struggling against their own weight and the armor's mass. His breathing was labored, his eyes dimmed to barely a glow. I will not," the instructor started. Then his knees buckled. The massive alien went down like a controlled building demolition, his shield generator shutting off automatically to prevent overload. He didn't pass out. His biology didn't work that way, but he was clearly done, his body in emergency cooldown mode, unable to continue. The arena's automated systems registered the technical exhaustion. Match concluded. Victory human combatant Hal. The observation galleries erupted, not in cheers exactly, but in a cacophony of sounds that suggested collective bewilderment, grudging respect, and possibly existential crisis. Hal walked over to where Bokrathar lay cooling. The instructor's eyes tracked him, still glowing faintly, filled with something that might have been understanding, or possibly just profound confusion. "You didn't break my shield," Bokrathar said quietly, his voice like distant thunder. "Nope. You didn't attack at all. Not really. You just ran, and I couldn't keep up." "Yeah." Hal sat down on the arena floor, his legs aching. "Look, I tried to tell everyone. Humans aren't built for one big hit. We're built for lots of little hits over a really long time. We're endurance predators. We don't win fights by being stronger. We win by still being there when the other guy collapses." Bokrathar was quiet for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he laughed, a sound like boulders tumbling down a mountain. "Your species fights like physics doesn't apply to you." "Physics applies," Hal corrected. "We just use different parts of it than you expect." The instructor managed to raise one massive hand. Hal, after a moment's hesitation, shook it. "I understand now," Bokrathar said, "why the paperwork was confused. You're not fragile. You're just built wrong, efficiently wrong." "I'm still just a maintenance tech," Hal pointed out. "Not anymore." Nixapalin appeared at the edge of the arena, datapad in hand, those multifaceted eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Congratulations, Hal. As of this moment, you're being reassigned to the Academy's Tactical Instruction Division, Specialty, Unconventional Warfare, and Adaptive Combat Theory." "What? No! I fix air recyclers." "You'll teach combat instructors how to account for opponents who don't follow standard kinematic models." Nixpalin's expression might have been a smile. "Starting next week, the curriculum is already being drafted." Hal looked at Bokrathar, who shrugged as much as someone made of rock could shrug while lying on the ground. He looked at the observation galleries, filled with aliens who were viewing him with mixtures of awe, fear, and morbid fascination. He looked at his hands, still trembling slightly from the extended exertion. "I hate bureaucracy so much," he said to nobody in particular. "Class starts at 0800, Nixapalin continued, ignoring him completely. "First lesson, basic human flexibility and why it's terrifying. Second lesson, endurance hunting and psychological warfare through persistence. Third lesson—" "Can I at least fix one air recycler?" Hal interrupted desperately. "Just one? Please? I'm very good at it." Nixapalin considered this. "Fine, one air recycler. Then you teach a class of 50 cadets how to stretch without dislocating their own joints. Most of them have exoskeletons. Then it'll be a very interesting class." Hal stood up, his back protesting, his legs sore, his entire body reminding him that he'd just run in circles for 20 minutes, while the galaxy's most intimidating instructor slowly overheated. He walked toward the arena exit, past the still-cooling Bokrathar, past the observation galleries, past his own common sense. Behind him, he heard one cadet whisper to another, "Did you see how much he leaked? That's their secret weapon. Aggressive moisture. And the bending. Don't forget the bending. I'm going to have nightmares about the bending." Hal paused at the doorway, turned back to the arena, and called out to nobody and everybody. "For the record, I threw my back out last week moving a compressor unit. This whole thing? I wasn't even at full capacity." The silence that followed was profound. Then someone, Hal never found out who, started laughing. And then someone else. And then the entire observation gallery erupted in the kind of laughter that comes from beings realizing the universe is much stranger and more flexible than they'd ever imagined. Hal left the arena, headed for the maintenance section, and went to fix an air recycler. It was meditative work, predictable, following clear rules and logical procedures. The recycler didn't care that he could bend weird or sweat too much or heal too fast. It just needed its filters cleaned and its compression seals checked. Humans, Hal reflected as he worked, weren't built to be the strongest or the toughest. They were built to be there when everyone else had given up, built to adapt, to persist, to keep going when physics and biology suggested they really shouldn't. Also built to fill out forms wrong and end up teaching alien combat instructors how to do yoga, apparently. But mostly, the persistence thing. The air recycler hummed back to life, perfectly calibrated, and Hal allowed himself a small smile. At least something in this galaxy still made sense. Tomorrow, he'd teach 50 terrified cadets how to stretch. Today, he'd fixed an air recycler. It wasn't the career he'd planned, but in the grand tradition of humanity, he'd adapt. He always did.